In today's video, we're going to continue our discussion about cultivating optimism and learning how to be happy no matter what. So often in life, it is our experiences that create some disappointment, stress, anger that cause us to feel unhappy. And to get started today, I'd like you to think about what makes you unhappy. And as I've asked that question to my clients, invariably it comes down to what makes them unhappy is the difference between what is real, what they're experiencing in the moment, and what they would like the ideal to be. And there's a gap. There's always a gap between what is real and what is ideal. And when we focus on that gap, all too often it can create negative emotions. And it's those negative emotions that create unhappiness. And by learning how to cultivate optimism and learning how to be happy, what we're trying to do is to reduce the frequency and the intensity of negative emotions and replace them with positive emotions. And that includes increasing their frequency and increasing their intensity. And I'm hoping that as we go through this, you will learn to not focus on the gap between what is real and ideal, but learn how to handle that gap in a different way with some real skills that will help you increase these positive emotions. And today we're going to be talking about those experiences that have a tendency to create negative emotions. Let me give you an example. Not that long ago, I broke a tooth, and it was a pretty bad break. In fact, it was really ragged, it was really sharp, and over the course of a few hours, it tore up my tongue, and I was in a lot of pain. I got a hold of the dentist and asked to come in, and they weren't able to see me until the following day. When I finally got to the dentist, the receptionist says, "Oh, how are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm doing good." She says, "How can you be doing good with a broken tooth?" And I was able to say, "Well, I just have a broken tooth. I'm not going to let it ruin my whole day." You see, so often we have an all or nothing mentality when it comes to our experiences, thinking that in order for an experience to be positive, it has to be 100% positive. And oftentimes when it's not 100% positive, we think it's a bad experience. I just had a broken tooth, and it was painful and it was hurting, but it didn't mean I was having a bad day. Let me tell you an example from one of my clients. Her name is Tammy. Tammy was telling me the story about visiting her daughter who lives in a neighboring state. And she went there to visit her daughter and play with her grandchildren. She was going to be there for 4 days. When she came back, I asked her, "How was your trip?" She said, "Oh, it was terrible. I had a terrible trip." I said, "Well, tell me about the trip." And as she started to tell me the story, what I learned is that the trip was mostly positive, except for one conversation with her daughter about daycare. You see, Tammy was a little upset that her daughter puts her children in daycare even though she doesn't work. And it became a little heated, and there was a little bit of contention, and even to the point that I would call it an argument. But it only lasted for an hour, and when I asked Tammy, "Well, what happened after the argument?" She says, "Oh, we got along great. We had a great time." But you see, Tammy had an all or nothing mentality. She thought that the 4-day trip was a bad trip because she had a small argument with her daughter. How do you react when things go wrong? Do you have an all or nothing mentality? Or are you able to separate the good from the bad? Here's another example. Let's say that you are in the store parking lot, the parking lot of a grocery store, and you have a fender bender. Now, we've all had a fender bender, and they can be very inconvenient. But in this case, let's say that no one got hurt, you exchanged insurance information. Does that ruin your whole day? Do you allow it to ruin your entire day? What if you were to get a speeding ticket on the way home from work? Would that ruin your day? What if someone called you a name or disrespected you or was rude to you? Would that ruin your day, or could you isolate it so that it was just a minor inconvenience, and then be able to consider that maybe the rest of the day had a lot of positive aspects? Another example is this. Let's say that you would go to your favorite restaurant and have your favorite meal, and they treat you well, and it's usually a really great experience. And you eat your meal, you order chocolate cake for dessert. The chocolate cake comes and it's nasty, and that's terrible chocolate cake. Are you then going to tell your friends and others that it was a terrible meal, or are you going to say it was a great meal except the dessert was nasty? So this is what I'd like you to do, is that as you go through the day, as you go through these experiences, I would like you to reduce your positive experience set point. Let me tell you how I got to this. Not that long ago, I was visiting a friend in the hospital. When I went into his room, I could tell that he was in pain. And I asked him, are you in pain? How much pain are you feeling? And he pointed to a chart on the wall, and many of you have seen this chart. It has a set of frowny faces in this chart going from 1 to 10, where 1 is not that frowny, but 10 is really frowny. And you can tell that 1 represents not a lot of pain, but 10 represents almost unbearable pain. And when I asked my friend, how much pain are you in? He pointed the chart and he says, I think I'm about a 6. Well, if we can look at our pain or our unhappiness on a scale of 1 to 10, I would like you to think about your experiences on a positive scale from 1 to 10. For example, on a pain scale, what is really painful for you? Is it 2 or 7? Is it 3 or 8? Now, we each feel pain differently, and guess what? We each feel unhappiness differently. We each feel happiness differently. And so I'd like you to think of your positive experiences on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being only a little bit positive and 10 being very positive. And I'm hoping that you have some experience where it is all very positive, that there's going to be a 10. But when does an experience become positive for you? Is it 3? Is it 2? Is it 1? Is it 7? And I'd like you to now think about that and then lower it. If you think an experience is positive at 5 or above, I'd like you to consider lowering that. So that it's not that you're lowering your expectations. What you're doing is that you're allowing negative emotions to be dissolved by looking at the positive aspects of every positive experience. And by lowering your positive experience set point, you actually have more positive experiences. And as you have more positive experiences, you will have more positive emotions, and those positive emotions will create more happiness. And as you have more happiness, you're going to feel better about yourself and be able to feel happier and be more optimistic. So again, this does not mean lowering your expectations. It means lowering your positive experience set point so you no longer have an all or nothing mentality. That you can actually have some things happen during the day that aren't that great, but it's not going to ruin the day and create a bad day. It's just going to be a bad moment or a bad experience. So over this next week, I'd like you to think about this and apply it to your daily experiences. So if you do get a speeding ticket, and I hope you don't, but let's say maybe you get a flat tire, maybe something happens to you, don't let it ruin your day. Create a positive emotion by lowering your positive experience set point. And I can tell you that you are going to have more positive experiences. And when you have more positive experiences, you actually learn how to be happier. So apply this over this next week, and I'm sure that you're going to feel better, you're going to feel happier, and you're going to be more optimistic.